dropped my suitcase at the gate. Not because I was tired from the journey. Not because my arms were weak after 5 years of carrying everything alone in a foreign country. I dropped it because through the window of my own house, the house my father built, the house I was married in, the house I cried in the night before I left for Germany, I could see her. Busy. My best friend since we were 7 years old. The woman who plaited my hair on my wedding day. The woman I trusted with my husband, my home, and my life. She was standing in my kitchen, laughing. And my husband Daniel was looking at her the way he used to look at me. I could not breathe. I could not move. I could not make a single sound. And then, I saw the child. A little girl. Maybe 3 years old. Sitting on the floor between them like she belonged there. Like that was her home. Like I had never existed. 5 years. I spent 5 years in Germany, sleeping in a cold one-room apartment, eating plain rice so I could send money home. 5 years of missing Daniel so much it felt like a physical wound in my chest. 5 years of calling busy every week just to hear a familiar voice. And this is what I came home to. But here is what I want you to understand: what happened next was not what any of us expected. Because the truth behind what Busy did was so much darker, so much colder, and so much more calculating than a simple betrayal. This was never about my husband. Stay with me. My name is Nkechi. And I need to start from the beginning so you understand exactly what was taken from me. I grew up in a small village in Rivers State. My father was a fisherman. My mother sold cloth at the market. We were not rich but we were not hungry, and in our village that was enough. Busy and I met on the first day of primary school. She sat next to me because there were no other seats. By the end of that first week we were finishing each other's sentences. By the end of that first year we were inseparable. When I met Daniel at 23 I was terrified Busy would feel replaced. Instead she was the one who pushed me toward him. She said, "Nkechi, that man looks at you like you are the answer to a question he has been asking his whole life. Do not waste that." So I married him. And when the government scholarship came, a rare opportunity to study textile trade in Germany for 2 years that eventually stretched to 5, it was Busy who sat with me the night before my flight while I cried. She held my hands and said, "Go. Build something. We will be here when you come back. We will be here." I believed her with everything I had. I want you to hold that in your mind as I tell you what happened next. Because everything that follows only makes sense when you understand how completely, how absolutely, I trusted that woman. The morning I landed back in Port Harcourt something felt wrong before I could name it. Not excitement. Not relief. Something closer to dread sitting at the bottom of my stomach like a stone. I told myself it was exhaustion. 20 hours of travel, 2 layovers, a connecting flight that smelled of engine oil and old food. I told myself my nerves were just tired. But then my taxi entered the village and the strangeness began. Mama turned, the woman who had sold tomatoes at the roadside corner for as long as I could remember. She looked up when my taxi passed. And she looked away. Quickly. The way people look away from something they do not want to be questioned about. Then a young boy pointed at my taxi and ran. Then an old woman made a sign with her fingers. The kind of sign our grandmothers make when they are warding something off. I leaned forward and asked my driver, "Is something happening in this village?" He kept his eyes on the road and said, "Auntie, I am just a driver." That was when my stomach turned to stone. Because in our village when people go quiet it means everyone already knows something that you don't. And they have all silently agreed not to be the one to tell you. I called Daniel's number. It ran out. I called Busy. It ran out. I told myself there was a simple explanation. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself in 5 minutes I would be inside my own home and everything would make sense. I was right that everything would make sense. I was completely wrong about everything else. My compound gate was painted blue. I never chose blue. I stood outside it for a full minute just staring. It sounds like a small thing. But when you have been away for 5 years and the first thing you see is that someone repainted your gate without asking you, in a color that was never yours, something cold moves through you that has no name. I pushed the gate open slowly. New curtains in my windows. A child's sandals by the front step. A smell from my kitchen that was not Daniel's cooking. And then I heard it. Laughter. Busy's laughter. I would know it anywhere. I had been hearing it since I was 7 years old. I moved to the window and looked in. She was at my stove, stirring my pot, wearing a wrapper I did not recognize. And Daniel, my Daniel, was sitting at my table watching her with soft eyes and a small smile on his face. The kind of smile you only give someone who has become home to you. And the child was on the floor between them, playing quietly. Like this was the only life she had ever known. I stood there long enough to count. That child was 3 years old. Maybe 3.5. I left 4 years ago. Something inside me went very, very still. I picked up my suitcase. I walked back through the gate. And I disappeared into the evening like I had never arrived at all. Because the Nkechi who left for Germany 5 years ago would have walked in screaming. But I was not that woman anymore. 5 years of surviving alone in a foreign country had taught me one thing above everything else. Never show your hand until you know the whole game. I needed the full truth. Not just what I could see through a window. So I rented a small room at the other end of the village under a different name. I told the landlady I was a trader passing through. And I began to watch. If you are new here, do not go anywhere because what I am about to tell you next will completely change everything you think you understand about this story. Like this video, hit subscribe, and stay with me. The first thing I needed to know was what story the village had been told about me. It took less than 2 days to find out. A woman at the market, I will call her Mama Chidra, she did not know who I was. I told her I was a distant relative of Daniel's, checking on the family. She was happy to talk. She told me that about a year after I left, a letter arrived from Germany. Written in my handwriting. Saying I had built a new life abroad, that I was not coming back, and that I was releasing Daniel from our marriage. The ground moved under my feet. I said, "Who brought this letter?" She said, "Busy." She said it came through a contact in Lagos. She cried when she read it out. We all thought she was such a good friend, staying to take care of Daniel after you abandoned him. Abandoned him. That word hit me like a slap across the face. I thanked her and walked away before she could see what was happening to my expression. That night I lay on the thin mattress in my rented room staring at the ceiling and thinking about one thing only. The handwriting. How did Busy forge a letter in my handwriting? And then I remembered. The night before I left for Germany I had written Busy a long letter. 4 pages. Everything I was feeling. Everything I was afraid of. I pressed it into her hands at the airport and told her to read it on her way home. She had 4 pages of my handwriting. 4 pages was more than enough. But the handwriting was not even the thing that broke me the most. The thing that broke me was the child. I could not stop thinking about her. 3 years old. Sitting on the floor of my house like she had always lived there. And something about her, something I could not explain, felt familiar in a way that disturbed me deeply. I needed to see her up close. So the next morning I positioned myself near the compound just before school run time. I watched Busy walk out of my gate holding the little girl's hand. And when they passed close enough I saw it. A small dark birthmark on the child's left wrist. I stopped breathing. Because that birthmark, that exact shape, that exact position runs in my mother's family. My grandmother had it. My mother has it. I have it on my own left wrist hidden under my watch. It does not run in Daniel's family. I know because I know Daniel's family the way you know people you have shared pepper soup and hard times with for years. So what was my family's birthmark doing on Busy's child? I went back to my room and I sat with that question for a very long time. And the answer that came to me was so dark, so ugly, that I pushed it away 3 times before I finally let myself look at it. What if this child was not Busy's child with Daniel? What if this child was connected to my bloodline in a way that had nothing to do with Daniel at all? I was not ready to follow that thread yet. But I kept pulling. 2 days later I found the letter writer. An old man who sat under a neem tree at the edge of the market with a portable typewriter and a reputation for discretion. I sat across from him and described the letter, the style, the phrasing, the way the sentences were constructed. His face changed. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, "I remember that letter. A woman brought me a handwritten sample and asked me to study the style and produce something similar. She said it was a surprise for a friend." I said, "What did this woman look like?" He described Busy down to the small scar above her left eyebrow. I sat back in my chair and felt something close down inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder than anger. The feeling you get when you realize that the person who destroyed your life did not do it in a moment of passion or weakness. They did it carefully. Deliberately. With planning and patience and a smile on their face the whole time. I said, "How long ago was this?" He said, 4 years. Maybe 4.5. Not long after the dry season started. Not long after I left. She had started planning before I even landed in Germany. I walked home in the dark that night and I did not cry. I had no tears left for Busy. What I had instead was something sharper and quieter and far more dangerous. Clarity. I now knew what she had done. But I still did not know why. Not fully. Because nothing about this added up to just wanting a man. Busy had never been short of men. She was beautiful and warm and the kind of woman that people naturally move toward. She did not need to destroy my life to find love. So what was this really about? The answer came from the most unexpected place. Aya Agba. She was the oldest woman in our village. Blind in one eye. Said to see everything the other eye missed. People visited her for many things, guidance, disputes, sicknesses that medicine could not cure. I had not planned to visit her. But the evening I found myself standing outside her compound, I realized my feet had brought me there without asking my mind for permission. She was sitting outside in the dark as if she had been waiting. She said, "I wondered when you would come." I said, "You knew I was back." She said, "The house knew first." Then I knew. She gestured for me to sit. I sat. And for a long moment neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You are looking for the why. You already have the what and the how. But the why is the piece that will either set you free or finish destroying you. So listen carefully." She told me something that night that rearranged everything. She said, "Your compound does not sit on ordinary ground. Your father knew this. The land your house is built on has been disputed by 2 families for 3 generations. Busy's family is one of those families. They have tried twice through the courts and failed both times. But there is an old village law that says if a piece of land sits unclaimed, abandoned by its owner for a period of time with no legal heir in residence, it can be petitioned back to the original claimant." I stared at her. She continued, "With you gone, declared absent by a letter of your own writing, and no children in that compound to establish lineage and claim, that land could be petitioned." Busy's family had already begun the paperwork. I felt the world tilt. I said, "This was never about Daniel." Aya Agba said, "Your husband was a door." Busy did not want the door. She wanted what was behind it. I sat there in the dark outside Aya Agba's compound for a long time after she finished speaking. Everything I thought I understood about betrayal had just been replaced by something far bigger and far colder. Busy had not fallen in love with my husband. She had executed a plan. A long, patient, calculated plan to take my land, erase my name from my own compound, and replace my entire existence with hers. Daniel was not the target. He was the tool. And I, the woman she had called her best friend since we were 7 years old, I was simply the obstacle she needed to remove. Aya Agbo pressed something into my hand before I left. A small black stone, smooth and warm in a way that stones should not be warm at night. She said, "Place this under the threshold of your gate at midnight. Whatever lives in that house that does not belong there will not sleep peacefully after tonight." I almost smiled. I said, "You believe a stone can do that?" She looked at me with her one good eye and said, "I believe that land remembers who it belongs to. And I believe that when the rightful owner returns, the land begins to speak." That night at midnight I crept to my compound in the dark. I knelt at the gate. I pressed the stone into the soil beneath the threshold with my own hands. Then I walked back to my rented room and waited. At 3 in the morning my phone buzzed. It was a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer. I answered. A voice on the other end, thin, shaking, barely above a whisper. It was Busy. She said, "Nkechi, I know you are here." The silence between us lasted so long I could hear her breathing. Then she said, "I cannot sleep. I have not slept in 3 days. Something is wrong with this house. Something is watching. And I need to tell you something. I need to tell you everything." I gripped my phone so hard my hand ached. And I said, "Then come and tell me. Come and tell me everything. I will be at the compound gate at dawn." I hung up. And I sat in the dark until morning came. If you have been watching this and you have not yet subscribed, do it now, because what happens at that gate when dawn comes is something I promise you did not see coming. Stay right here. She was already there when I arrived. Standing outside my gate in the early morning fog, wrapped in a shawl, looking like a woman who had not slept in weeks. Not days. Weeks. Her eyes were swollen. Her hands were shaking. And when she saw me walking toward her through the mist, she made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not a word. Not a name. Just a sound. The kind that comes from somewhere beneath language. Beneath pride. Beneath everything a person builds around themselves to feel safe. I stopped in front of her. I did not hug her. I did not shout at her. I just looked at her the way you look at someone you are seeing clearly for the very first time. She opened her mouth and closed it again. Then she said, "I do not know where to start." I said, "Start at the beginning, Busy. We have time." She laughed. A broken, hollow sound. She said, "You always said that. Even when we were children. Nkechi always said we have time." I said, "We do not have as much as you think. Start talking." And she did. She talked for a long time. Standing there outside my gate in the fog with the village still sleeping around us. And what came out of her mouth was not what I expected. Even after everything Aya Agba had told me. Even after everything I had uncovered in my investigation. Because what Busy told me went further back than I knew. She said, "My father was a broken man for most of my childhood. And the thing that broke him was this land. He believed with everything he had that this compound belonged to our family. He spent years fighting for it. He spent money we did not have. He died angry and ashamed, and I watched my mother fold under the weight of his failure for the rest of her life." Her voice cracked. She said, "When you got that scholarship, I told myself it was a sign. I told myself this was the moment I had been waiting for. I could fix what my father could not fix. I could give my mother back what she lost. I could stop being the daughter of a man who died with nothing." I said, So you decided to take everything from me instead. She looked at the ground. She said, I told myself you would be fine. You were always fine. You were always the one who landed on her feet. I told myself you would build a new life abroad and you would not even miss this one. I felt something rise in my chest. I said, busy. I lost a pregnancy on the flight to Germany. Did you know that? She looked up sharply. I said, I was 2 weeks pregnant when I left. I never told anyone. I lost it somewhere over the Mediterranean and I buried it in silence because I had no one to call. No one to hold me. Because the woman I would have called was the same woman who had already started planning how to erase me. The sound she made then was different from any sound I had heard from her that morning. It was grief. Real grief. The kind you cannot perform. She said, Nkechi. I did not know. I said, I know you did not know. But I need you to understand what your plan cost me. Not just the house. Not just Daniel. You took years of my life. You took my grief and made me carry it alone. You took the ground I was supposed to come home to. She was crying fully now. Not the careful crying people do when they want sympathy. The ugly, even, uncontrollable kind. She said, I am sorry. I know that is not enough. I know there is nothing I can say that is enough. But I am sorry, Nkechi. I am sorry for every single piece of it. I stood there in the morning fog and I looked at my best friend, this woman I had loved since I was 7 years old, and I felt everything at once. Rage. Grief. Pity. Exhaustion. And underneath all of it, buried so deep I almost did not recognize it, something that felt dangerously close to understanding. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But understanding. Because I knew what it meant to be afraid of being nothing. I knew what it meant to watch someone you loved move toward a life you could not reach and feel yourself shrinking in the shadow of their becoming. I had felt that too. In different ways. In Germany. Alone. Watching other people build and flourish while I ate plain rice and wondered if I had made the right choice. Fear does terrible things to people. It does not excuse what Busy did. But it explained it. And sometimes explanation is the first step back to yourself. I said, I am not going to destroy you, Busy. She blinked. Like she had not heard me correctly. I said, I am not going to take this to the elders and drag your name through the village. I am not going to tell Daniel everything in a way designed to hurt you. I am going to take back what is mine. My compound. My land. My name. And you are going to help me do it quietly and completely. Every document. Every letter. Every piece of paperwork your family filed on this land. You are going to undo it. All of it. She nodded. Quickly. Desperately. I said, and then you are going to leave. Not because I am punishing you. But because we both know you cannot heal in a place where every face reminds you of what you did. Go to the city. Find the girl you were before fear turned you into this. Find her and take care of her. She broke down completely. She reached for my hand and I let her take it. Just for a moment. Just long enough to feel the weight of 30 years of friendship sitting in that one point of contact between us. Then I let go. And I walked through my own gate. Into my own compound. Into the house that had been waiting for me. Now let me tell you what happened to Daniel. He came to me 3 days later. He did not knock loudly. He tapped on the gate the way a man taps when he is not sure he has the right to knock at all. I opened it. He looked at me for a long time and then he said, I am so sorry, Nkechi. I believed the letter. I believed all of it. And I know that does not undo anything. I know sorry is the smallest word in the world right now. But I need you to know that not a single day passed that I did not think about you. Not one. I looked at him. This man I had married. This man who had been broken and then rebuilt by someone else's hands while I was gone. I said, I believe you, Daniel. He exhaled like he had been holding that breath for years. I said, but believing you and going back to you are two different things. What we had was real. And what happened to it was not your fault and not entirely mine. But it is broken in ways I do not have the energy to repair right now. I need to build myself back first. And you need to figure out who you are when no one is managing your grief for you. He nodded. His eyes were wet. He said, will you ever forgive me? I said, I already have. Forgiveness is for me, not for you. It means I am not going to carry this. It does not mean I am coming back. He left quietly. And I stood in my compound alone for the first time and just breathed. 1 year later. My compound is mine. Every document resolved. Every legal challenge withdrawn. The land under my feet is registered in my name and will pass to my children and their children after them. I started a textile business. Small at first. Just me and 2 women from the village who wanted to learn. Then it grew. The way things grow when they are built on solid ground. Busy is in Lagos. I hear she is working. I hear she is quieter than she used to be. I hear she is trying. One morning a letter arrived. No return address. I knew the handwriting before I even opened it. 2 lines. I think about the girl I was before I became afraid. I am trying to find her again. I read it once. I folded it carefully. I walked to the mango tree growing at the corner of my compound, the one I planted the week I came home, and I pressed the letter into the soil at its roots. I did not write back. But I did not throw it away either. Because Aya Agba told me something the last time I visited her. She said, the woman who survives betrayal has 2 futures. In one future she becomes hard and the hardness protects her. In the other future she becomes deep. And depth is more valuable than protection because depth can hold things. It can hold pain and joy and people and time. Hardness can only hold itself. I chose depth. Not because it was easy. Because I had worked too hard and come too far to let someone else's fear make me into something smaller than who I was born to be. The house remembered me. And finally, completely, so did I. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are going through your own season of betrayal, I want you to know something. The house always remembers who it belongs to. Hold on. Go back. Reclaim what is yours. Thank you for watching.